Hello everybody, as Professor Com said, my name is Mariana, and today I will be sharing with you a little bit of what my research is about. And usually the acknowledgement goes at last, but I'm gonna go ahead and start with that. I wanna thank Dr. Blumenthal for giving me the chance to work on this research. We've been working on this for almost 3 years now, so it's been an honor. So again, I'm gonna give you guys some background information before we start talking really about the research. So I will be sharing with you guys what spleen cells are, what is melanoma, what is a problematic cause due to melanoma, what is guanabana, how it's been used previously, and how can they all relate. So what are spleen cells? And as its name states, these are cells that come from the spleen. What is the spleen? It is the largest organ of the lymphoid system. It acts as a filter for blood-borne pathogens, and those pathogens can either be viruses or bacteria. So the spleen has a very important role, and it is involved in the immune system as well, because through this filter of blood action that it has, it can let the immune system know that, hey, there's something wrong here. You know, there's something that is not our cells, something invading our individual system, and you might want to take care of that. So it does. So my question here is, what happens when our immune system fails to recognize danger? Specifically, I'm referring to cancer, just because how does cancer arise is these malignant cells start proliferating, meaning they start growing and growing, and they are able to evade our immune system because they portray themselves as our own cells. And their immune system think, oh, hey, that's normal, we like it. And that's how it usually goes on, and we get the cancer. So what is melanoma? Melanoma is one type of skin cancer. It is actually the most common, and it is also the most lethal type of cancer. What regions of skin it affects usually affects the ones that are exposed to sunlight, such as your face, your neck, your arms, hands, and legs. Again, thousands of deaths are attributed to this type of cancer every year. This is why it is so important to try and find a way to combat this type of cancer. From the last presentation, we were able to see the A, B, C, D, and E's of how to identify melanoma, so I'm just gonna go through this very quickly. If you see any mole that is asymmetrical, that is, it's not even on both sides, when you throw a line through it, you might want to take a look at it. If the borders are not even, if the color is changing, if the diameter is more than 6 millimeters, and if it's evolving, if it starts on point A and it continues to more regions of the skin, you might want to go to your physician and just kind of let them know, because there's something going on there. So what is guanabana? Guanabana, its scientific name is Annona muricata. It is a deciduous tree that grows in tropical and also subtropical areas of the world, specifically South America, in Peru, and in Brazil. This is very popular. It goes by different names. It can be called graviola, guanabana. There's like pow pow. It's really interesting how they call it. And then in some regions of Asia, and it's particularly in Malaysia, that's where you can find this awesome fruit. So it's been used by locals for many, many years. And the traditional ways that they use it is to kind of take care of cases of skin diseases, diabetes, diarrhea, rheumatoid, and even cancer. So scholars started taking a look at this specific plant just because of, hey, it appears so that it cures cancer, so let us prove it. And they were able to prove that it is cytotoxic to many cancer cells, many cancer cell types as well. But there was this loophole. There was no much research done with melanoma. And that's where Dr. Blumenthal and I started taking charge. We decided that, again, let's just recap for a minute here. We know that cancer can be a potential scenario if our immune system fails to recognize danger of malignant cells. There are not very many treatments available for this melanoma, this type of cancer, and there are even less treatments that are not as invasive as chemotherapy and radiation. So this is why there is a need to find any alternative modalities. And also, guanabana has been used traditionally by locals to cure multiple diseases. So Dr. B and I thought that, hey, we came up with this question: what can the effects of guanabana be for both melanoma and spleen cells? Now that we had a question, we had to come up with a hypothesis. And our hypothesis was that guanabana does have an inhibitory effect on melanoma cells, and that it is expected to have an enhancing effect on the proliferation of spleen cells. So now let's dive into research. The methods that I used for these research, we first selected, once we obtained our fruit, we selected our factors that we were going to work with. So we selected the pulp, the skin, and the leaves. From the leaves, we actually obtained two different factors, boiled leaves and filter leaves. The preparation for the boiled leaves was a little bit different from the rest of the factors, just because, as its name says there, we had to boil the leaves. So upon rinsing them twice with PBS, which is just to make sure we got rid of any dirt or extra things that the leaves might carry, we boiled it in water, then we centrifuged that, and we extracted the supernatant and filtered it and then performed the serial dilutions. So for the skin, pulp, and the filter leaves, we rinsed the factors, and we dried it in an oven for 96 hours at 75 degrees Celsius. Once it was dry, we grinded them. That's a fun word to say for me. And then using mortar and pestles. And it was very fun for the first couple of hours. But as it continued, as time continued passing by, it got very old for me to keep on grinding and playing with it. But that's what you have to do. And then I diluted the factors from a 1 gram to 10 milliliters ratio in just sterile water. Centrifuge it again for 5 minutes, and then filter the supernatant, and then perform the serial dilutions. Now, you've heard me say serial dilutions twice now, and for those wondering what those are, here's a graph for you. So we performed the serial dilutions for each factor. We did 3 dilutions per factor, just so we can test what concentration it performs, it exerts an activity against both melanoma and for the spleen cells. So, what I did was, from the factor, I will extract 100 microliters of that set factor, put it in the first tube that was already containing a media, for 100 microliters of media. Then vortex it, which is just a fun way of saying we shook it really well. And then we extracted 100 microliters of this tube to the next one, and then so on. So we got a 1 to 5, 1 to 25, and 1 to 100, 125. 1 to 125 dilution. So once we had our factors, we proceeded to set up our plates. So like it says there, each of the factor concentration was added in triplicates for the plate. And that only means that for each factor, we will take up 3 wells and then continue to the next factor. So we use 2 types of assays for 2 different types of cells. For the melanoma assay, we use murine cells, and that's just cells that come out of a mouse. So how we set up the plate, and I don't want to bore you with so many details, but this is just how it ended up looking. We had our control groups, just so we know how melanoma cells usually grow with no factors added, just in a nice media where they can thrive and do their thing. And then we started adding the factors. So boiled leaves, then filter leaves, skin, and pulp. Kind of the similar modality was used for the spleen cells. Again, there were murine cells as well. So in this case, we had to divide the plate in two halves. Just the first one containing Con-A, which is a mitogen, that it is used in order for us to know that how can the cells proliferate. So it aids the spleen cells to proliferate, because usually without the mitogen, without Con-A, we wouldn't be able to see much growth, factor or no factor added. But still, we tested because science. And so the first half containing Con-A, I added 100 microliters of media to all the plate, and then for the first half, I will put the factor dilutions, the cells, and add the mitogen. For the next half, I didn't add the mitogen, and this is how it looked like. So once these plates were set up, we will put it in the oven for 48 hours. We incubated, not oven, well, in the incubator, sorry, didn't mean to say that. In the incubator for 48 hours. Upon those 48 hours, we will have to label the cells and then put them in the incubator again for 24 hours. And then we will have to harvest the cells so they can be ready to be put in the scintillation machine so they can be counted. And then the fun part starts, where we have to analyze the data. And here are some of my results. What I want you guys to focus from this graph is, since we're looking at the melanoma cell inhibition, we want to see the bars that are very low. They're shorter than the first one that is our control. So as you can see, the filter leaves, the pulp factor, and the first bar for the skin factor yielded, they show a match inhibition compared to the remaining factor, which is boil leaves. Filter leaves, so yeah, that's the trend that we saw. We were super excited. And then we took a look to spleen cell proliferation. So I want you guys to focus on the ones that are colors blue and compare the first one, which is a control, to the rest. In the spleen cells, we actually want to look for the inverse. We want to see an increasement on the cell count. When looking at the data, we noticed that the skin factors actually showed a bit of proliferation. We saw that trend, and again, we got excited. But statistics showed otherwise for this specific situation. But for here, it actually showed that, yes, there was a statistical significant difference telling us that, yeah, the filter leaves, pulp, and the highest concentration of the skin factor actually did have an inhibitory effect on the melanoma cells. But for the spleen cell proliferation, there was no statistical significant difference. Therefore, even though we saw a trend on the graph, it wasn't really inhibiting nor enhancing the proliferation of these spleen cells. So my conclusions for this research are that guanabana does have an inhibitory effect on melanoma cells, specifically the filter leaves, pulp factors, and the highest concentration for the skin factor. And my second conclusion is that the presence of guanabana on spleen cells does not exert any statistical significant effect on the proliferation of such cells, but this doesn't necessarily mean something negative. It only shows that the spleen cells, when around this factor, they don't die, neither they thrive. So it's something kind of positive, but we would like for it to be just boosting it up because it's our immune system. Future research that I think will be pretty important for this research overall is to just kind of see why was it that for the filter leaves and the boil leaves, even though they were the same factor, they were both leaves, the filter leaves were the ones exerting an inhibitory effect rather than the boil leaves. So what Dr. Blumenthal and I thought was that there is maybe a protein that is being denatured when so much heat is being added when boiling the leaves. So maybe taking an extra time and looking at this might be something positive. Again, a combination of this anti-melanogenic and potential immune enhancing factors could lead to a natural treatment for melanoma. And more research needs to be done pertaining all the biochemical parts of guanabana, just to know what types of proteins we're dealing with and how this might lead to identifying what pathway they're tackling on. And these are some of my references. I didn't want to put all of them there. So I'm ready for questions. And thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, first of all, great job. And then I guess my question kind of relates to what I presented on. So if guanabana does show to have an inhibitory effect that you could use, would it matter the way that you give it to the patient? So would they eat the guanabana? Would you put it topically or something?
Great question. So prior to doing this, we had to do some research into has it been done to other cancers. And like I said, scholars do have they've proven that it does exert a cytotoxic effect on many types of cancers. So yes, they will have to be ingesting, like just eating it. One is yummy. Two, it's positive for it's battling the cancer cells that you have within your body. There's a lot of, even though it's proven that it has a cytotoxic effect, there's still clinical trials going on that they want to focus on just giving patients something natural that their body can process instead of putting, chemicals or chemotherapy drugs that might end up diminishing their lifestyle. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess the neat thing about melanoma is that it's on the skin, it's outside. So you don't actually have to ingest this necessarily. You could actually topically apply it, just rub it on and see. And I do want Mariana to emphasize that while her hypothesis that it enhanced spleen cells didn't necessarily work out, but the important thing is it didn't kill the spleen cells, so that the spleen cells are still active and functional, so that it's a double-edged sword. It's not killing the normal healthy immune response, and it can still respond to the tumor cell antigens, but it's killing the tumor cells directly as well. So even though half her hypothesis worked, the other half didn't prove that it enhanced immune response, but it didn't kill the immune cells, which is important.
Yes. And something to add to that is that when testing for the spleen cells, sometimes, maybe more, trials have to be done. We can invest more time into testing this, factors on spleen cells. It's just that we don't want to kill too many mice. So that's the hard part of why maybe, the average that we got didn't work out, but if potentially more future research keeps going on, and maybe we'll find something positive.
I just had a question kind of related to this idea of the connections between your project and Valeria's, and obviously they're both Dr. Blumenthal's students, so it makes sense that there's connections. Do you see, as you do research on these kind of naturally occurring things, like this naturally occurring fruit, that maybe we're starting to reach almost kind of a tipping point in cancer treatment where so many people are debilitated by things like chemotherapy and radiation that there's more attention being paid to these potential natural ways to treat cancer? And then kind of going along with that, there's so many of these, one natural way to cure your cancer, and, that kind of misinformation out there as well. What are some ways you think you can both work on these kinds of treatments, but also combat the perception among some that, oh, I just need to do this natural thing and I don't need to go to the doctor, or I need to reject chemotherapy because there are these natural possibilities?
So I think I got your question. Is yes, there's our bodies, or the people that have been going on treatments, their bodies have been just plagued with so many different drugs that instead of helping them more, it's just diminishing their immune system. That's why And plus, resistance to the chemotherapy drugs, it's a thing, you know. That's why people are like, locals, like traditionally, this type of medicine has been used for so many years. So scholars are starting to take a look on that. On the second part of your question is, I think the best way to get rid of, you know, the wrong perception of like, I'll just use this one factor and my life is gonna be so much better. One is test it. You know, that's not the role for the patients themselves. It's the role for the scientific community, for scholars, for physicians to, you know, put on this big role that they have been given and start testing. You know, it's not gonna, it can be a waste of time. No, it can. You're proving or disproving something. So and it will all, like, most likely have a positive impact. Then, last semester, I took an amazing class, cancer biology, and we learned that to battle cancer, our individual systems, our individual bodies are so different among ourselves that we cannot just choose one specific method. It's gonna have to be a more of a complementary method type of thing. So we can tackle it from all the angles. We can use chemotherapy, we can use radiation, and we can use something natural, you know, to give the body a break, for it to rest for a little bit and try, but still keep on an ongoing process of battling the cancer. So I think that's the best approach. As of now, it might change. 2019 hasn't really changed that much, but we're hoping that physicians can take on that role and start investing their time, money, all of the resources to just try to make the patient's life better and not just being, you know, just sticking to what we've been doing for so many years, and maybe taking a look at what other people have been doing for so many years and it's working out. Yes. I think he has to go.
So this is both a response to what you just said and a response to your question too, because we all ended up talking about cancer today for some reason. I think it's really interesting that today, because everyone has access to all sorts of information, like I'm only able to do the literature search that I did because I have access to PubMed and to all these wonderful journal articles. And I wonder, like, if there wasn't such a controversy in terms of, like, there are so many people that like see vitamin C on the shelves, and just because the bottle says this will be a cure-all thing for this, this, and this, do you think that there's a way that we can make the public more comfortable with understanding the scientific process? Because I think that sometimes by the time that the product comes out and science says this works, no one really talks about it took this many years to get here. So, like, is there something that maybe you think the physicians could do, or something that, or is it like just public knowledge, letting people know that before you try topical vitamin C or vitamin C supplements or guanabana, feel comfortable looking into the literature, or maybe asking your physician or doing something like that, so you're not just believing in a cure-all method that magically works?
Yeah, so I think the major takeaway is, or the major thing is, even you already have the physician being or trying to be as informed as he or she can. You do also need a patient that is trying to be as informed as he or she can. It's a work, it's a teamwork. Not me, future maybe. The physician I can try as hard, you know, as I can to provide you with the best care that I can give you. But again, I'm just almost on the same page as you are. I get the same type of information given. But if you, the patient, comes and like, hey, I heard of guanabana, you know, people are trying it here, there's these clinical trials, I did my research, do you think maybe we can give it a go? Do you think this is something that this hospital might have available? Or with vitamin C, this and that? Then I think that will make the whole process much, much better. I don't want to say easier, but, you know, it will be more comfortable. And the goal is to have informed patients and informed physicians that they can take on, you know, just like the role of trying to battle cancer. You're welcome.
Good job. Do you have you looked into anything, any research investigating what the active component in Winona might be? And like, if so, have you looked to see if through ingestion, blood concentrations of whatever that may be is high enough to potentially treat other types of cancers aside from just skin cancers?
Yeah, so I didn't, so when looking at the data, or like all the research and all the information out there, they were trying to do just take GCMS of guanabana, just out of extracts of the plant, putting in these fancy machines and getting the results of what proteins or what components there are. But that's just that you can do whatever plant you want to do. The hard part is to try to identify what exactly is working on the cancer. They have, again, they've been testing it on so many different types of cancer. It was just that melanoma was not one of those. And I was surprised because this is one of the most common and lethal type of cancer. But because they even tested on like non-melanoma skin cancer. They've tested it on pancreatic cancer, but then again, it's an ongoing research because especially that's the most aggressive type of cancer. I think I don't have any like 100% answer for you, just telling you like what components there might be, but I think just this is something positive. People are starting to notice a natural way to battle cancer. And I think just keep on doing the research, investing the money that needs to be invested, and trying to find an alternative method for all of these types of cancers. They've been using it for so many years, so why not give it a shot?
All right, thanks.